man, the title of my message is, well, first of all, I want to say this. Did everybody get a fork? I know it's a weird question. Like if you're watching on the live stream, you were like, what are they talking about? Everybody, you should have a green fork. If you do not have a green fork, raise your hand and one of our ushers will bring it to you. Just keep your hand. If you don't have it, if you do have a green fork, put your hand down. If you don't have one, raise your hand. We'll bring one to you. It's very important that you get that green fork. So the title of my message is Leaders Eat Last. Leaders Eat Last. And how did I come up with that title? Well, I work for the fire department, for those that don't know, and typically how it works for dinner time, usually the new guy, the probie, cooks. And then when it's time to eat, there's kind of a hierarchy of who gets their food first. And typically, and if the chief is there eating with you guys, you're going to let the chief make his plate first. Then the lieutenant, then the engineer, that's my position, then the medic, and it goes on down. Well, we had a lieutenant, he was working overtime or something, and it was time, they brought out the food, and we were like, all right, LT, get your food. And he's like, no, I get my food last. You guys get your food. And then he actually swapped the hierarchy. He swapped it. So the probie, the lowest guy that just cooked the food, he made his plate first, and it went like that. And then somebody asked him, it's like, why are you doing that? And he said that he was in the Marines, and I didn't even know this until he said something about it. But he said that in the military, and it's every branch of the military, there's this unwritten rule that leaders eat last. So if you're like a general in the Marines, you're going to wait till it starts from the lowest ranking. They make their plate first, and then it goes all the way up until the highest ranking is time for him to eat. And the reason they do that is so it's a sign that, hey, as the leader, I'm going to make sure that those underneath me are taken care of. Make sure that all the soldiers are taken care of before they are. And there's two reasons that this really hit home with me. One, I thought it was just an awesome concept. Two, one of my favorite authors is Simon Sinek, and he wrote a book called Leaders Eat Last, and I really didn't know what it was about. And when he said that, I was already planning on getting the book, and I was like, I'm definitely getting the book. He's the author that wrote the book Start With Why, and I started researching into this, of why they have Leaders Eat Last, why they did this. And this isn't like in any protocol book. This isn't in any rules and regulations. This is just something that they have done for years upon years upon years. It's just like this unwritten rule. Nobody has to tell them, hey, this is what we're going to do. They just know the leaders eat last. And why? Because it creates an environment of trust and respect. And then it's proven that that by doing this, it leads to increased productivity, morale, and success. Now, I was like, when did this start? Because I was really interested. It actually started, someone guessed it in the first service, it started in the 1800s. It actually started in 1861. Anybody know what went on in 1861? Anybody?
I wasn't there.
What is it, Matt? Civil War. Started in 1861. So in 1861, it was the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln came and visited the soldiers. When they did, they had the food out, and they told the president, hey, go ahead and make your plate. And he said, no, I'm not going to. And he said, I'm not going to make my plate till everybody else is served. And he stood there, and he waited for every single soldier and every single person that was on that campus, made sure that they ate before he made a plate. And from that day forward, the soldiers, they said, you know what? Leaders eat last. Now, this is totally opposite. Like, if you get some book on entrepreneur book or a book on leading an organization, they're going to tell you the opposite. There's books out there. I've read them. There's books out there, and they say you take care of you first. You pay you first. And then you take care of those underneath you. But here in the military, it's totally opposite. Why? Because it's your brothers and sisters. It's family. And Pastor Mark and I, we were on the same page with this. We've said it since day one. We are going to operate this church, Fairlawn Church, not like an organization, but like a family. Two reasons. One, we feel like it's the right thing to do. Two, like, I can't. I'm not going to speak for Pastor Mark, but I've never been part of like a big church, so I don't really know how to run an organization. You know, sometimes I wish I wish I would have been on staff at a mega church because they're super organized, and I just like to know how they do some of the things that they do. But I never were. God, He didn't have that on my journey. But because of this man right here, my dad, I know how to operate and run a family because he taught me how to. So Pastor Mark and I, we have, since day one, we're going to run Fairlawn Church is going to be ran like a family, not like an organization. Now, I get it. You're like, Jimmy, this is giving month. Why are you talking about this? You should be talking about finances and stuff. I know you guys were dying. Like, yes, I can't wait to hear a message about money. It's going to be in there. But it's not money month. It's giving month. And I know we have this gold meter and all this stuff. But it's not just giving of finances, but giving of ourselves. And sometimes, for some of us, it's easier to give finances than give of ourselves or give of our time. And I found that usually how we've experienced God is the way that we demonstrate God. So if you just only know God as a provider, and you are doing pretty well financially, and that God's provided for you, typically you have no problem giving because God has provided for you. Now some, if you're like, I don't know that God's provided anything. My bills aren't paid. I'm getting evicted from my house. They repoed my car yesterday. One, there's probably some stuff we need to look into that because there's probably a reason. Sometimes we blame God for some of this stuff that's really just our fault. But if you're in that boat, but God's put somebody in your life that has invested time and formed that relationship, then you usually don't have a problem investing time into other people here at the church. Or if somebody within the church give you some kind of acts of kindness, maybe the church got together and painted your house or helped take care of your kids or something like that, usually then you have no problem with when there's a call for an act of service, you're like right on it. But I believe that God, He wants us to experience His goodness in all the different ways. So we're going to talk about leadership, and I believe that each and every one of us that are in this building is called to be a leader. So I'm going to tell you a story. It's happened Saturday, September 21st, 2013. On this day, 4 gunmen, they entered the Westgate Mall in Kenya, and for 3.5 hours, they just ran amok. They murdered people. They started fires. They have been credited, these four gunmen, for killing at least 67 people. Now, during this, as people started running and panicking, as you would if you were in a mall and gunman walked in and started firing the gun, you would start running. Well, this one mom, her name was Faith Wambua. She was there with her 2 kids, a 4-year-old, 9-year-old, 4-year-old son, 9-year-old daughter, and she told them, we're not going to run. She said, lay down. They laid down behind this counter, and for 4 or 5 hours, they played dead. And I heard the story, then I looked up the picture, and we got a picture of it. This is Faith Wumba covering her 4-year-old child with her 9-year-old daughter beside her. And I thought, this picture right here represents leadership more than probably any picture I've seen. Because see, as a parent, nobody has to tell you, hey, you need to protect your kids. This right here, what this woman, Faith Wimba, is doing, that should be what we're doing, is when threat enters, when something comes in, we're willing to lay on top of our brothers and sisters to protect them. Because that's about family leadership. There's another picture. These are from security cameras up high. There's actually a YouTube video about this where they're laying there and the security guards, once the threat was gone, they're going and they're trying to get her to come out of there. And her and her kids, they're not moving. There was a point when they were just wondering, are they really dead or not? Because they were so afraid that these security guards were actually the gunmen. and feared for their lives. So they laid there 4 to 5 hours just playing dead, her on top. There's another picture that you can find online where she's actually covering the ears of her son as they can hear the gunshots and stuff. And I just thought, man, what a beautiful picture of leadership. So, I got a question for you. And you don't got to answer out loud. You can just, this is for during this message. This is the question. If everyone in the church was like you, would we be stronger or would we be weaker? Because a lot of times we sit back and we can nitpick what everybody else isn't doing. And here's the thing, I've said this many times, but everybody always thinks that they do the most stuff. Why? Because we are with ourselves 100% of the time. Like, we see everything we do, but we don't see everything everybody else does. So, there's a story in the Bible about this dude named Nehemiah. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh yeah, Nehemiah, he was a bullfrog. No. Jeremiah was a bullfrog, but both of them very good friends of mine. So, I want to give you a backstory from the story of Nehemiah. So, there came a time in Israel's history where they were captured by this empire called Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar. They came in, they stormed Jerusalem, they stormed Israel, and they tore down the walls, they tore down the temple, they stole everything that was of worth, and they took prisoners, they took slaves. They didn't take everybody, they left some people there. And you're thinking, oh man, they were lucky they got left there. They had no homes, no walls, the temple was destroyed, and they're left there with nothing. Now the people that were left there, they were the remnant. They were what was left of Israel. The rest of them were taken as slaves to Babylon. Now, after a while, this Babylon empire that they didn't believe anybody could defeat them, well, this other empire called the Persians, they came in and they defeated Babylon, and now they are over these Hebrew people that Babylon has taken as slaves. There became this guy, King Cyrus. Now, King Cyrus had this idea. He said, you know what? We didn't capture the Hebrew people. So he said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to let any of them that want to. They're welcome to stay here in the Persian Empire. But any of them that want to go back to Israel, we're going to allow them to go back to Israel. Now, I had somebody one time say, like, why didn't they just all go back? Well, what are they going back to? Because the walls are destroyed, the temple is destroyed, their homes are destroyed. But here, 70 years later, Cyrus says, you can go back. So there became these different waves of the Hebrew people that went back to Israel. Now, 144 years after Babylon took over Israel, in 444 BC, there was this dude named Nehemiah. And Nehemiah was the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. Now, if you think your job is tough, Nehemiah was the cupbearer. His job was to take a sip of the wine before they gave that cup to King Xerxes. Why? Because if it had poison in it, it would kill Nehemiah instead of the king. So the way to tell if he was doing a good job or not is he would die. Luckily, King Cyrus was pretty popular. People weren't trying to kill him. So Nehemiah, he got to stay in the palace. He was doing pretty good. He was thought of as someone that had a little bit of influence. And that's why a group of men from Israel, from Jerusalem, showed up at Nehemiah's door with a report. Said, hey, Nehemiah. Now, Nehemiah, he's never been to Israel, never been to Jerusalem. They've been captured for 144 years. They've been in Persia his entire life. He only has heard stories about Jerusalem. And they come to his door and they say, Nehemiah, Your brothers and sisters that are back in Jerusalem, they're not doing too well. And this is what he said. It's in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 3 through 4. He says, and they said to me, the survivors who are left from the captivity in the province are there in great distress and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is also broken down, and its gates are burning with fire. Why? Because what's happened is that the Israelites have gone back there, and they start building these walls, and then these other threats come in, these other nations come in, and it's easy prey, and they come and they tear down the walls that they just rebuilt. They burn the homes that they just rebuilt, and then they take their women and their children as slaves. So you can see how, you would be a little down if this stuff continued to happen as a cycle over and over again. And then verse 4, it says, so it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven. So I want to just go through what operating as a family requires, if that's what we're going to do here at Fairlawn. Because if we're all have that position of leadership, and God's called us all to be leaders, we got to decide, are we going to, as a group, operate as a family? So the first thing is empathy over sympathy. Anybody know the difference? See, empathy is you put yourself in their shoes. Sympathy is, oh, that sucks. I feel really bad for you. Things look good for my house. See, these are people Nehemiah did not know. He did not meet. Nehemiah could have easily taken that stance and been, temple in Jerusalem looks good from the Persian Empire. But he had sorrow. He began to weep. He began to pray. When we have empathy for others, we can put ourselves in their shoes. And then empathy motivates us to move towards that pain and towards that sorrow. Because we don't want to leave them there. Sympathy is like, yeah, I'm going to feel bad for you, but I'm going to feel bad for you over here. So if we're going to lead as a family, it's empathy over sympathy. The second thing is leadership over position. Because see, Nehemiah in chapter 2, verse 2 through 5, it says, therefore the king said to me, so he's before the king, it says, why is your face sad since you are not sick? This is nothing but sorrow of the heart. So I became dreadfully afraid and said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire? Then the king said to me, what do you request? So I prayed to God of heaven, and I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servants has found favor in your sight, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Why is he dreadfully afraid? Because what he's asking for, there's a possibility that it could get him killed. Yeah, the Israelites had freedom to go back to Jerusalem, but Nehemiah had a position, an important position as far as the king's concerned, because the king ain't going to be sipping and tasting his own wine. He's going to have to put somebody else as a cupbearer in that place. So Nehemiah could have been killed for this suggestion, but he had favor. So it's leadership over position. There's a difference, because there's a lot of people that have a title and a position, but they're not a leader. You can have a position, whatever it may be, and still not lead and not be a leader. See, leadership is a decision. It's a choice. When you decide to be a leader, it's not like, oh, I need a position. Every now and then we'll have people say, I want to be a deacon. I want to be this. And every time I think, I was like, you have no idea what's asked as being a deacon. Because there's a lot. Usually, typically, it's the ones that are like, hey, we want you to be a deacon. Not me. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Because if we're chasing a position, Here's the thing. A lot of times we chase positions because we feel like we'll have respect if we have that position. And a lot of times that's true. But here's the thing. There's going to become a time when you leave that position. And if all you have respect for is because of that position, once you don't have that position, that respect will be gone. And you'll be like, what happened? People used to make my plate. People used to open my doors. People used to say hi to me. Now, little dog's trying to trip me every time I go to my seat. Because truthfully, they respect the position, but they don't respect you. So now that you don't have that position, all that respect is gone. But if you make that decision and that choice to be a leader, then you don't even care about the position. There's a lot of people without positions that are leaders. There's a lot of people within this church without a position, but you have stepped up as a leader. And that's what we must do as a family. So Nehemiah, he gets to Jerusalem. And check this out. He gets to Jerusalem and he's not like, hey guys, what are y'all doing just sitting around? Let's rebuild these walls. No, he knows these people have rebuilt these walls time and time again, and people just keep coming in. The enemy keeps coming in and just tearing down what they just rebuilt. You think you'd be motivated to keep building? See, Nehemiah, he comes in, and the Bible says that he starts to form the relationships, and then in the middle of the night, when everybody's sleeping, he gathers a couple guys together, and they start walking around the walls, and he starts assessing the damage. The next day, Nehemiah doesn't go, okay, guys, I got a plan, which he did have a plan, but he didn't say, okay, here, Willis, here's a hammer, all right? Here's some nails. Get to work, buddy. I'm going to sit over here. Watch you. Make sure you're doing it right. He didn't do that. What Nehemiah did is he grabbed the hammer, he grabbed the nails, and he started working on the wall. Because if we're going to operate like a family, we have to lead over manage. And when we lead over manage, we don't ask others to do what we wouldn't do. If I went in and I said, hey, Wyatt, L-Dog did it again. He blew up the bathroom, and then he just left. He just got on the bus and left. I need you to clean it. No, I'm not doing it. Well, I'd be like, shoot, I ain't doing it either. But then, the L-Dog blew up the bathroom, left on the bus. That's what you get for sitting in the front. It's like the splash zone here. And I get in there, and I start cleaning it, and Wyatt walks by, says, man, Jimmy's in there cleaning. The next time, L-Dog blows up the bathroom. Well, that may motivate him to say, hey, you know what? One of our leaders did it. I'm just going to clean it up. And then, the next time I see L-Dog, we're going to have some words. So if we're going to operate as a family, we lead over manage. You manage organizations. You don't manage families. You lead families. Now, here's what happens when you start leading and things start moving forward. There's always a group of people that they benefit from status quo, from everything staying the same, from complacency. I call them the haters, all right? The haters are the ones that's on your social media. You're like, you put, I just got a new car. And they're like, looks like a 2016. It's new to me, dude. The one's like, man, we just bought a new house. It's like, my house has more square footage than that house. It's the haters. And Nehemiah had haters. And there was two dudes. One named Sanballat and one named Tobiah. Great names, right? Now, we see what they in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1 through 3. We see a conversation between these two guys. And it says, But it so happened when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the walls, that he was furious and very indignant and mocked the Jews. And he spoke before his brethren in the army of Samaria and said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Now, hold on. You guys are very lucky that I'm speaking today, because I am very fluent in sarcasm. And I detect big-time sarcasm right here. And I know exactly how this played out. Sanballat goes to Tobiah. He's like, what are these feeble Jews doing? What? They're going to fortify themselves? They're going to build the walls in a day? What? What are they going to do? Offer sacrifices? And then Tobiah joins in. He's like, yeah, that wall's going to be so weak that it's a little bitty fox that's going to jump on it and it'll break the walls. That's exactly how it went down. It's biblically accurate. Biblically accurate. You guys are so lucky I'm speaking. But see, this is what a leader does. A leader ignores the haters. If we're just worried about trying to manage the situation and we're responding to all this like, yeah, it's a 2016, but, it's new for me. I had a 2008 before. No, nobody needs to know all that. Just let it be. There's some people you just need to ignore. You're letting them distract you. And that's what was happening with Nehemiah. These guys, they were trying to distract him. They even started writing him letters saying, hey, you're doing a great job over there. Why don't you come meet with us? We'll help you out. Nehemiah's like, no, they're trying to trick me. And he just would ignore the letter, throw it away. Then they'd send him another one. They sent him another one. They sent him another one. Eventually, it just escalated to the part where it became threats. They're like, we're going to tell King Xerxes that you're trying to become king of Israel, and you are going to raise up everybody to come against him. Nehemiah responded, pretty much, go for it, man. He's already had, he was comfortable in what he was doing because he had a relationship with the king. And so many times we're not comfortable with what we're doing because we don't have a relationship with our king. And we're just going through the motions, trying to fake it till we make it type stuff. But you don't have to do that, because a relationship with our king is available to you right now. And when you have that relationship, when you know who you are, when you know your identity, when you know you are a son or daughter of the king, those threats, they just fall to the wayside. My kids, especially my youngest daughter, is like, oh man, if you do that, your dad's going to be so mad, you're going to get so much trouble. And she's like, I haven't been in trouble with my dad my entire life. She knows she has me wrapped around her finger. You could threaten her with, oh, wait till your dad sees this, or wait till I tell your dad. She don't care. She's comfortable. She knows her identity as my daughter. Now, if her dad tells her mom, yeah, Julie gets on it, maybe there's this a little different story. So then they have these threats of attacks. They get word, hey, these guys are going to attack you. So this is what Nehemiah did. Nehemiah 4:17, it says, those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves, so with one hand they worked at construction and with the other held a weapon. One hand they held a hammer, the other hand they held a sword. It's another thing. When you lead as a family, when you lead over manage, you don't dismiss, but you protect. And here's the thing. There was a time in Nehemiah where, as they were building the wall, the people of Jerusalem, they were like, they started bickering back and forth because, just because it's a family don't mean there's issues. Anybody have a family without issues? I have never met a family without issues. So they start bickering back and forth, and people are like, they're complaining. They're like, you know what? I'm doing more work than them, or they're doing more work than me. And then as they were building it, there were some that saying, you know what? They should be doing more work than us, because when they were slaves, we bought them out of their slavery so that they could come back home. And they're like, so they really owe us, so they should be doing more work. Nehemiah was like, did you buy them out of slavery so they could be your slaves, or did you buy them out of slavery to free them? So another thing that happens when you lead instead of manage, you don't take advantage of others. Say, oh man, you owe me. You got a debt. Some of you are holding on to these debts. People owe you this, owe you that. And I'm telling you right now, God's saying, let that debt go. Some of you are just like, well, I will, but they owe me an apology. You got to think what you're saying. They owe you an apology. First of all, if you got to tell someone they owe you an apology, are you really getting a real apology? Second, the reason they say, you owe me an apology, because it's a debt. Let it go. From right now forward, I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is they no longer owe you that apology. You let it go. That debt's clear. So when we operate as a family, we don't take advantage. We protect. Now, one thing Nehemiah didn't do, because these nobles, they consider themselves higher class. He didn't say, you know what? I don't like your attitude. So when we do get the wall built, you're going to stand on the outside of the wall. He didn't do that. Why? Because family don't dismiss. Times, oh man, but he really made me mad. Oh, he cursed me out. Oh, he did that. No. If it's family, we don't dismiss, but what we do is we protect. So if there comes a threat, we're going to protect that threat. We're against that threat. I'll give you an example. We have an amazing kids ministry here at Fairlawn. I am so excited about FC Kids and what God's doing there. So one of the things that we have in the works, and we'll talk about it at the family meeting, is over in this area right here, we're going to be building a fence that on Wednesdays it's going to be locked. It's going to take up half the parking lot, and there's not going to be any access inside that fence except for our kids and those that have been cleared to work with our kids. Now, on Sundays, the gates will be open. They'll be unlocked, so we can still use it for parking. On Wednesdays, they're going to be shut off for that. Why do we do that? Because we do it because we care about our kids. We protect them. The same reason we lock our doors at night. For protection. So, no, we don't dismiss. We don't say, oh, man, you really blew that one. You messed that one up, so you're out. No, we don't do that. But we do protect. And we do confront. And if you're in a place where you can't, you get so mad and you jump from church to church every time you are confronted, I'm just going to save you the time. Just go find another church. Because if you're looking for a covering, you'll have it here. If you're just looking for, you can just do whatever and you don't ever have to be corrected or no one's ever going to confront you, you're not going to find it here. You know, so many times, there's so many churches that they never get outside the walls of the church because there's so much bleeding on the inside of the church. And the leaders of the church, they have to run around and try to stop all the bleeding within the church, that they never can get past the walls. There's churches that have been around for generations, and they never can get past the walls. Because it's just nitpicking and arguing with each other and tearing each other down. Here's the thing. This is, I shared this at the last leadership meeting. If we're operating as a family, we got to have this rule that we don't should on each other. S-H-O-U-L-D. Families don't should on each other. Oh, you should have done this. What you should have done, it's already done. We want to beat people down with what they should have done. Now, I do feel, a side note on this, I feel led to say this. There's some of you that are here today, and it's not so much that other people are shooting on you, but you're shooting on yourself over and over and over again, and you never can get past whatever that is that you've been shooting on yourself about. You never can move on. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done this. I should have been a better parent. I should have been a better wife. I should have been a better husband. I should have been a better employee. And you are just constantly shooting on yourself. And if you continue to do that, I assure you I'm saying should, Willis. If you're constantly shooting on yourself, you can never move forward and you can never progress. Some of you, the best thing you do is just let that go. There's a part in chapter 7, as a pastor and as someone trying to teach the word, there comes this difficult time in the Bible. Like if you've ever read through the Bible, there's different times there where it's just like a list of names. And you can't even pronounce the names unless you're Willis Nettles. He knows all the names. He's the go-to guy for the names. You're like, I'm just going to skip it. Well, lately I've thought, you know what? There's a reason they're there. Let me try to figure out why they're there. Let me start researching into this. And there's a place in Nehemiah. There's two places actually where it just starts mentioning names and families. And I was praying about it as I was preparing this. And I was like, why are all those names there? And then I felt like I got the answer. Because we already know it's a whole group of people, right? And how many know you can have a building full of people, you can have a big crowd, but if everybody's about themselves, it's not going to go anywhere. So Nehemiah stops this part and he starts listing all the people that was a part of building the wall and putting up the gates. And he mentions all of them because, why? Because it took all of them working together to rebuild this wall and to put the gates back up. So here's the thing about this. For the past few months, I have this new favorite word. I'll go through them sometimes, and I don't know if everybody catches on. My wife does for sure. But one of my new favorite words is this word called platitude. I knew it. So, and I mention almost all my messages because what platitudes are there are statements that, yeah, they could be true, but they're kind of like blanket statements that we all like just know. Like, hey, here at Farallon, we're all about kingdom. Well, like you're not going to have anybody, Stacy's not going to get up and go, I don't think we should be about kingdom. But if somebody just walked in here, they may have no idea what we're talking about. So when I was writing this, I was like, you know what? A lot of these could be kind of looked at as just maybe just platitudes or really good stuff. But kind of maybe there's this formula that we can have for being better leaders within the family. So I started researching and I reread Simon Sinek's book, and there's part on it where he talks about the biology and the science of the human body and what goes on, different chemicals that are released. And I thought, yeah, that's where I'm going to go. So I'm going to talk about these few chemicals that go on that God has put within us. And I believe that he's put them within us to help with leadership and just help being human, really. They all serve a purpose. So first one is endorphins. Now, what endorphins do is they have this purpose of they mask the pain. They mask the pain. So the reason why, because our ancestors back in the day, couldn't just go to Publix or to Aldi and get groceries. They had to go out and they had to hunt for food. They also, at times, when a threat came, like a lion or whatever it was, they also had to be able to run for safety. So a lot of running. I don't know about you, but I'm not a big runner. I am glad that I wasn't born back then. I would have been lion food for sure. You ever heard of the runner's high? Like they start running, and these endorphins build up, and they just like, yeah, I just got to keep on running. That is so foreign to me. I guess probably because I've never ran. Michael, I don't think I've ever ran more than 2 minutes. It has to run more than 2 minutes, I know, for that runner's high. But the reason is because these endorphins go off, and they start to mask the pain. Because of our ancestors had to have this physical endurance. They had to track animals. They had to run for miles. Then they had to have the stamina to bring the animals back to the village. God made us with this clever incentive to encourage us to keep going. You know, a little endorphin rush. Now, this one I do know, like with endorphins, we don't go and hunt for our food. I mean, some may, but not on a regular basis. You don't have to. But how many here has ever laughed? You're like, yeah, we've sat through your messages. Of course we've laughed. But you know, when you laugh, your body creates endorphins. Anybody ever laugh so much it hurts? Because your muscles are contracting. What that is those endorphins are running off. They are wearing off. And now it actually hurts. If it wasn't for those endorphins, it would hurt right away just to laugh. Because we're contracting those muscles, those stomach muscles. Not everybody has abs like Bob Dameron, you know. So it's a lot of using those muscles. So, but these endorphins are released, and here's the thing: you can't laugh and be afraid at the same time. I'm not talking about like nervous laughs, but if you're laughing, it's almost impossible to be afraid and laugh at the same time. So when we laugh, those endorphins are set off. The next chemical is dopamine. Now, this is this good feeling we get when we find something. Anybody ever lost anything and then you find it and you're like, yes, and it felt so good? Or so when you find something you're looking for, or when you finish something. Anybody ever finished a project and you're just like, you're so excited, you're like, yeah, I finally finished it. It's this feeling of satisfaction, whatever that word is. Satisfaction, there you go. That's why I have you guys. You finish an important task. You know, that's why they have mile markers. Like if you're running, I've never ran a marathon. I never planned to run a marathon. But I heard that there's these mile markers. There's markers. That lets you know that, hey, you're a little closer to the finish line. So every time you go past one, endorphins chemically go off in your body, and that keeps you going. Like if you were hungry, and in the distance you saw an apple tree, and you started walking closer, you know what, that's not going to work. Let's do this. Say you're hungry, and you smell pizza. And you just started walking towards that smell. And as you walk closer, you started smelling it more. You walk, there's endorphins go off. You look closer, you see people walking by you with eating pizza. You're like, pizza's close. Those endorphins go off. Those endorphins, they get you where you're like, you know what, I'm going to keep walking. I mean, I'm not going to run. I'm not crazy. But I'm going to keep walking until I find that pizzeria. And get there, because that goal, it's there. God designed us in this clever way to help us stay focused. One way that we get dopamine is by eating. It feels good when we eat. That dopamine goes off, we repeat that. That's why people become obese, because that dopamine goes off and they continue to repeat that, so they get that rush of dopamine. They repeat that behavior. So like anybody make to-do lists? It feels good like when you're able to cross one of them off, right? It's because every time you cross one off, those endorphins go off. That's why people that balance a checkbook, who balances a checkbook anymore? But people that balance a checkbook, they're more likely to save. Because savings is not a state of mind. Like, I guess God just didn't create me to be a saver. No, it's not a state of mind. It's a goal. It's an achievement. It's a choice. It's dopamine that helps people graduate from college, become doctors, work tirelessly to realize what they've imagined, the vision they have for the future. Now, there should be this fine print on dopamine bottles, if you could get this in a bottle. But there's fine print that's highly addictive, because dopamine is highly addictive. These behaviors that come through dopamine setting off in our body, we also get those from cocaine, nicotine, alcohol, and gambling. This feeling of just intoxication. It's because it's setting off this dopamine. Just another thing that hijacks our dopamine levels. Because a lot of times you can be like, oh man, I just don't know people that are just addicted to a substance. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. Well, it also sets off the dopamine in your system when you look at social media, texting, emails, number of likes, number of followers, because you're chasing the ding, the buzz, the flash of the phone. You know, they say that the first thing you do when you wake up is you make yourself a drink, you're an alcoholic. Then what is it the first thing you do when you wake up, before you do anything else, you got to check your phone? You may be addicted. You may be an addict. Churches that just constantly just run on dopamine, it's all about the numbers. How many people can we get? It's all about goal meters. Now you're like, we got a goal meter. I mean, you're kind of being a hypocrite, Jimmy. Regardless if this goal is met or not, I can guarantee you this church, Farallon, will continue and will go on. Yes. We are not about this. Yes. Okay. Now here's the thing. Endorphins and dopamine, they're important, but you know, they can be released on our own. They just can be released just us by ourselves. So there's some other, and they can be very dangerous, but there's other chemicals that go on there. We call them the selfless chemicals. The first one is serotonin, called the leadership chemical. It's built for, we're built for relationships. We're built for this. Why does it feel good when a bunch of people get together? Because this is what we're built for. Serotonin is released when we have that feeling of acceptance. When people like us, that's why we have award ceremonies. That's why we have acknowledgments. That's why we have graduation. You know, truthfully, like when you graduate, you don't have to have a big graduation. They could just email you the certificate, say print it out on your own time. But we have graduations. Why? Because when you walk across that stage, that serotonin is released. And then it kind of goes two ways, because then your parents or your loved ones that are sitting there watching that, serotonin is released in them. It's that feeling of acceptance, of acknowledgement. That feeling of, you know what I'm doing right now is bigger than myself. Because when you just do it for yourself, that's not where it's released serotonin. It's impossible to have serotonin released in your body, just you by yourself. And it's so important. But the only way for that to be released is through fellowship. The next one is oxytocin. Now, this is everybody's favorite because it's the love chemical. It's that feeling of we get from friendship, from love, from deep trust. I used to say all the time, when I was writing this out in this book, it hit me because I always say, my mom passed away 18 years ago, and I have two sisters. Now, if I just spend time with Chrissy or if I just spend time with Angie, it's nice. I love my sisters, two of my best friends. But there's something about it when we get together. We get together for dinner every October 10th because that was my mom's birthday. And that's coming up, and I'm really excited about it. And I've said it for years. It's something when I'm together with both my sisters, I get that same feeling I used to get when Mom was there. But it's with both of them. And as I was writing this in the book, I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I have that same feeling. Because when I'm with them, this high doses of oxytocin is released in my body. And it's that warm, fuzzy feeling. That feeling of just coming together. I mean, you know, it's not the same. It's very important that you worship on your own, but there's something about it when we come together and we worship. As John and the praise team was leading us in worship, oxytocin was being released in our bodies. Now, if you go home and you put on elevation worship or one of those, it's amazing. It's awesome. You can feel the presence of God, but oxytocin is not released. It's only released when you're there with other people in relationship with others. It's that response is responsible for those strong bonds. And unlike dopamine, it's not instant gratification. Oxytocin is long-lasting. The last one that by the way, oxytocin, it boosts your immune system. You're more resistant to addictive qualities of dopamine when you have higher levels of oxytocin in your bloodstream. And those that have high levels of oxytocin live 35% longer than those that don't. So having oxytocin, when we come together, it is helping us live longer. So, see, Stacy, you were about to stop coming, and now you can live longer. The last one that I want to mention is cortisol. Cortisol is what's responsible for stress and anxiety. Since when cortisol is released, it's this reflex that alerts us of possible danger. Why? Because if we're alerted, if there's real danger, we have a better chance of survival. Because we have a chance to protect ourselves. Now, when cortisol is released in our body, we are distracted and we don't get anything else done. It's a release of adrenaline in our bloodstream. That's why you hear stories about mothers who have this superhuman strength to save a child. It's that release of that adrenaline in their body. Now, here's the thing about cortisol. It's important. It's how God created us. But it's not meant to stay in our system for long periods of time. It's supposed to get it, and then it leaves. It's not supposed to stay in the system. And we learned this. Here's the thing: it's highly effective. If we get the cortisol to release in other people, it's very easy to manipulate them and control people that have high levels of cortisol. We learned this from a young age as kids. It's my stuff like, if you don't do that, I won't be your friend anymore. Yeah. Or how about this, as we get older? If you don't meet that goal, you're going to be fired. I will divorce you if you don't do this. Or if you don't start doing this. And then we start walking on eggshells. And it's highly effective for a while. Because what cortisol does, it blocks the release of oxytocin. And then after a while, it causes increased anger and irritation. Suppresses sex drive, by the way. And then it desensitizes us from empathy. You ever met someone, they just don't care about anything? Yeah. Probably have high levels of cortisol within their system because it desensitizes us. That's why I'm not a big fan of the fire and brimstone message. Because what it does is it releases cortisol in those that are in church. You're constantly preaching fire and brimstone and inserting fear, and then it's effective for a while. But as you continue to have that high level of cortisol in your system, after a while you are desensitized to the point where I don't care. You can preach to me all you want about going to hell. I don't care. That's why it only lasts for a while. When you have cortisol pumping through your veins, it slows down the glucose metabolism, increases blood pressure, increases inflammatory responses, and it impairs the ability of your body to create oxytocin. Oxytocin boosts the immune system, cortisol compromises it. And if we're going to operate as a family, what we need to do is stop having language that releases that cortisol in each other. Because when people walk through those doors, it should be a safe place. place where they know they belong, where they have a place, regardless of what they went through, their background, their lifestyle, their choices. Because when they come in, they're going to know they're going to be loved. Because I feel like the love of God is just so amazing. It's that good that release of cortisol is not needed. Those scare tactics aren't needed because God's love and God's acceptance is that good. So here's the thing. I asked Heath and Raul to come up here, and they're going to demonstrate something for us. Because, see, how many like music? All right? Most people, right? And you may have your favorite song, and you just love playing it. And it's just your song. So what I'm going to do is I asked them to give a demonstration. So I'm first going to ask Heath to play something. And then I'm going to have Raul play something. And then I'm going to have them play that together. And we're going to see how that sounds. So Heath. Hold on, Raul. No, just Heath. This guy's always trying to hog up the spotlight. Jeez. All right, beautiful, Heath. Now, stop playing. Raul, now it's your turn to play. All right. Both sound good, right? Now, if I can have y'all play that exact same way, that same thing together, we're going to see how it sounds. Just for clarity, it should sound terrible. All right, stop. So they're both playing something totally different. They're not on the same page, and it's just kind of throwing it off. Like, it's great hearing them together by themselves, but now that they're together as a team, they got to get on the same page, right? Yeah. Same thing. Like, we have somebody over here operating in the family, and they're operating this way, but someone over here is doing something totally different. Then we're pulling from each other. So this time, as if none of this was planned out at all, this time, I want you guys to play together, but this time on the same page. Let's see how it sounds. All right. So, all right, y'all can stop with Pretty Woman. I told them when they did it, I said, listen, we're going to get a bigger reaction from a secular song than we would a worship song. It always happens every time. So it's important for us, if we operate as a family, to work together as a team. The New Testament church, they knew this. They realized this as they came together. You remember the time, Acts chapter 2, 44 and 45, it says, all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had a need. My friends, my family, my co-leaders of Farallon Church, may Farallon be a community where everyone feels accepted and everyone feels like they belong. May we be a family that gives, not just of our finances, but also of ourselves. May we always operate as a family and never as an organization. Grace and peace. I love you.